Hello everybody. Now, as I previously mentioned, I'm not going to be here Monday and Tuesday this week, so I'm going to leave exercises for you. Basically, no big thing. I have a screaming, farting baby who will not sleep through the night, and I've got to get some sleep. So, so I'm going to take a couple of days off. So, first thing we need to do is move on from what we've been covering, which is here in the book somewhere. So you will need your books today and tomorrow. Page 255, emotive language. What is emotive language? Emotive language is language that embodies emotion rather than logic. Now, as we've discussed before, your brain, such as it is, can only do one of two things. It can be emotional or it can be logical. Now, a logical brain is thinking, reasoning, working things out. You won't make too many mistakes if you can use your logical brain. Your logical brain makes good, sound choices. Now, I had an argument, well, not an argument, we had a debate with my wife the other day. She wanted to buy this new piece of jewellery, and it was a completely emotional decision based on the fact that she's also stuck indoors with a baby that never stops crying. Don't even get me started on that one. And she wanted to buy some jewellery to cheer herself up. And I said, it's an emotional choice because you don't have the money to buy the one you want, so you're buying something that you don't really want, and it's going to cost you money that you don't really want to spend. And that's going to mean that you've got something less good than the thing that you actually have already, and you're just going to want the thing you want now even more later, but you'll have even less money to spend on it. So it was all this confusing thing, and eventually she said, yeah, you know what? You're being reasonable, you're being logical, you're right, I should wait until I go back to work full time and we've got more money. Logic wins out. Logic always does. It always does. The problem is we don't often think logically. We often think with our emotional side, and the two do not work together. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that emotional brain that tells you, I want this. Which is why we eat garbage food, why we drive around in cars that we can't see over the dashboards of, why we buy fast motorbikes that don't work properly. That's really more my thing. This is who we are as people. We are emotionally driven. When we listen to those emotional voices, we make mistakes. Unfortunately, they tend to be the loudest voices. Now, that's okay for us. It's okay if you go out and you buy a can of Coke instead of a bottle of water. Okay, you can get a little bit fat. That's up to you. That's on you. But when we've got entire governments doing it, then we've got a serious problem. And when we've got scientists doing it, we're heading for a disaster. And that's the truth. If you take climate change, logically, there is no real cause for concern. Nobody is saying we shouldn't clean up the planet. Nobody is saying that. But when we've got a situation that makes no sense, where scientists are coming out and using utter pseudoscience that is based on flawed premises, where it's been debunked back in the 70s and 80s, where we've got new technologies, where we're digging out core samples of ice from Antarctica, we're looking at it and saying, okay, this isn't true. Climate change is not what we're saying it is. And when all this evidence is being presented and scientists are saying, it's probably still happening, we've got a serious problem. We've got a serious problem. When we've got people like that crazy European girl saying, how dare you, and all this kind of crap. We've got a person with mental health issues. She's autistic. And she's being lauded as a hero because she's emotional. Why don't we have a scientist standing up and saying, well, let's look at this logically. Let's look at what steps we can take. Because they're saying, plastic is never going to break down for thousands of years. And then also, and the same headline is saying, scientists have worked out a bacteria that can break down plastics in a matter of hours. So it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. It's scare tactics, and it keeps you emotional because while you're emotional, you're not thinking. Governments should not be behaving like this. People, we expect that. We don't trust those people, we don't like those people, we don't want to work with those people, but we don't care that they exist. When governments and scientists and the people that we trust to make decisions do it, we have a serious issue. Now, we looked at the genetic engineering research, and a lot of that was also emotional. The scientists and ethicists were looking at it and said, yeah, no problem. That's an emotional choice. They've never looked at the reasoning. We've got bioethicists, theologians. Ethicists discuss the ethics and morals of a decision. Theologians look at the religious aspects of a decision. Not at any point did it say that scientists were getting together to look at the possible ramifications of this decision. So we've literally got people working for an emotional background instead of people working for a logical background. And this is why the world is utter chaos. Look at America. We've got the Republicans trying to be logical, and we've got the Democrats trying to be emotional. And the people are following the Democrats. Not many people, just the idiots. And the country's in chaos. The Roe versus Wade decision this week is a very interesting case in point. It's an entirely emotional response. Basically, if you're not aware of it, there is an abortion law in America called the Roe versus Wade law, because it was a case where these two people were against each other, Roe versus Wade. The decision took abortion rights away from the states and took them to a central government level. And so no state could overturn the government federal decision. That has now been overturned, shown to be illegal. So now all that's doing is returning the choice about whether abortions should be legal or not to the state level. So in other words, it's taking the power away from the president and giving it back closer to the people. And people are upset about it because it's my body, my choice. Well, if you're scared of losing a law that the president has, the rights that the president has, and being given back yourself, then you're an idiot. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people, liberals who want this law. They want to have free abortions, saying, oh, this is terrible. How dare you take away my choices? The choice has been given to the people. It's been given back to you by this new change. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing people make these emotional choices, have no idea of the real situation because they're not interested enough to find out. They're just reacting emotionally. And we've bred a whole generation of them. And that's the problem of this kind of stuff. Let's have a look at what it says in the book. Emotive language appeals to the reader's emotions. Emotive language can evoke positive or negative feelings in the reader. It can be used to express opinions and offer a possibility or a choice. Emotive language appeals to our emotions and needs. It is directed at the reader and attempts to lead the reader to believe that the information in the argument is reasonable. If you're clouding an argument with emotions, then you're hiding the fact that it isn't logical. Bear that in mind. So I mentioned the subject of genetics, and many people will react with hostility. The word hostility is an emotive term. Hostility, anger, fear, these are all emotive words. And it evokes images of anger and suggests violence. We're afraid of violence. Nobody wants to get the crap beaten out of them, their teeth broken out with a hammer, their eyeballs drilled out with screwdrivers. Nobody wants this. And this is what it suggests. Even though none of those things are even likely, more likely people will just argue, raise their voices a little bit. But when we start suggesting these things, people are scared of them. And that's how things work. This is interfering with nature, some might say. It is something that we should not do. The sentence describes a strong opinion held by some people. The use of we shows that the writer thinks the readers should support his opinion. Yeah, it's a trick. Rather than saying I believe, we say we believe. We, who's we? You and I? Because I might not believe what you say. So it's a trick to invite you into my little group. When you feel connected to somebody, you tend to agree with them. Rhetorical questions. Now this is where it slightly gets a little bit off track, as usual for this book. Rhetorical questions have obvious answers, for example. Should genetics be closed to scientific investigation? No, it should not. This is not a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question that we pose because we already know the answer. So the question provides substance to our argument. If I was to say, you should go to school, shouldn't you? That's a rhetorical question. It doesn't have an answer, it already makes a statement. Shouldn't you go to school? We already know the answer. You should go to school. You have to. You have to learn. If you want to be a productive member of society and not collect tin cans down the side of the road, you should go to school. That's a rhetorical question. This isn't. This has a yes or no answer. There shouldn't be an answer to a rhetorical question. The question should be posed because the only possible answer is common sense, and we all know what it means. It's basically forming an argument by using a question. Speakers or writers who ask rhetorical questions do not expect answers, rather they want to emphasize the answer this kind of question gives. I agree with that. It's just that they've not chosen a rhetorical question as an example. Taboos, to quote a popular science magazine, are simply a bad excuse for not thinking. Lots of things are bad excuses for not thinking. Culture is a bad excuse for not thinking. Culture is a nightmare. Culture, we say, it's my culture to do this. Okay, so why are you doing it? Because in India, people were crapping on the side of the street, literally rolling down their trousers and taking a dump on the pavement. And they said, oh, it's our culture. How dare you be offended by our culture? Okay, it's a culture where people are dying of diseases because there's literal human feces everywhere, in the gutters, blood everywhere. It's disgusting. And you say, this is wrong. And they go, but it's our culture. Culture is an excuse for not thinking. Anything is an excuse for not thinking, except thinking. Taboos. I mean, there are good taboos. We talked about this in genetic engineering, such as not marrying your cousin. That's a taboo for a reason. Not getting married or having a relationship with your brothers and sisters or fathers and mothers. Those things are taboos for a very good reason. There are other taboos. There are things that we don't do. There are relationships we don't have with animals, for example. That's a taboo. And these taboos are because we know at an instinctive level that they would cause us problems. They are genetically forbidden by our makeup. And we know that. So taboos are not necessarily a bad excuse for not thinking. This is emotive language. And when I say it's an excuse for not thinking, basically I'm accusing you of being an idiot if you don't agree with me. That's what it's doing. You're an idiot if you don't say this. Only a fool would go along with what this man says. Then I'm basically calling you a fool, and you have to question yourself. And that's how these tricks work. Words with negative connotations like those used in the sentence above, taboo, bad excuse, are strong emotive words and used to provoke the reader so she will formulate an opinion on the issue. And we've seen this in the army. I'm sure you've seen a movie where in American army they shout, they scream at you, they yell at you, they break you down. They break down your emotional barriers until you're damaged and you're looking for someone to help build you back up. And this is a simple example of that. We break you down with these words. We accuse you of being stupid. You haven't understood the topic. You're not clever enough to understand this. Listen to us. We're the scientists. And when you're broken down, you're thinking, well, all right, so what do I do? And then they tell you what to do and they build you back up. And this is exactly how it works. And this is something that the Russians worked on back in the 1950s called brainwashing. This is a brainwashing technique. Strip away your belief structure, put in our own belief structure over the top. The problem is, it worked too well. Once we've put a new thought process into your brains, you will fight to support it. And this is why we see people saying there are more than two genders, because reason has been stripped away from them. New things have been put into their brain, and they can't reject it. So they'll fight. And you see these mental gymnastics where these idiots are flipping around trying to make a point, and they don't know how to, because all they're doing is supporting the stupidity that's been forced into their brain. And that is now the American system. So be very aware of emotive language. If it's ever being used on you, then it's being used to corrupt what you know is true. Stick to logic and reason and you'll always be better off. Unfortunately, debates rarely do that. So, on Google Class, I've given you a piece of text. I want you to go through it, read it, understand it, and then I want you to write me a report about the use of emotive language in that text. So I want you to analyze it, show how emotive language has been used to make you think something that may or may not be true. And that's it. Submit it on Google Classroom. I'll rate it as a quiz. Thank you very much for listening. See you when I get back.